Welcome, Rajan and Professor Gosain, for the first keynote conversation on the second day of India Geospatial Leadership Summit. Thank you so much for giving us time and being here. So your conversation will revolve around technology innovation and good practices on geospatial adoption in the water sector. So with this, I hand over the floor to you, Rajan.
Well, thank you, Professor Gosain. Great to see you again. It's been a while. We met some time ago in Delhi, and hope that things are fine at your end, and also in IIT Delhi. So thank you for and Mega and the AGI team. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think, as we all know, water is an important topic, especially now. With the climate change, erratic rainfall, and groundwater depletion, and burgeoning population, urbanization. I mean, clearly there are a lot of factors that makes it imperative that we preserve water as a very important utility for human existence. And while India has 18% of the world's population, we have only 4% of world's water resources. So it will be very prudent for us to utilize water in a very responsible and in a conservative manner, so that we utilize this resource to the maximum without destroying the sources, etc. So in that sense, I think water is very important, not only for our daily lives, but also for industries such as manufacturing, agriculture, construction, anything you can think of. Water is important, high-tech manufacturing, etc. So in that sense, I also believe that in order to ensure that we optimize the use of our water resources, it is very important for technology to be utilized, and especially geospatial, because everything has to do with coordinates and where the assets are and how to manage the assets. So in that sense, in fact, Trimble is one of the companies that is really focusing on water as a utility. And we have organically and inorganically acquired solutions, high technology geospatial solutions that will enable this to happen. So the first is obviously to create an asset map. So where your pipes are, where your valves are, especially if they're underground, it is all the more important for one to create a GIS map of the water utilities, whether it is for pipe water or wastewater. Equally important for recycling is wastewater. So it's not just water as pipe water for drinking purposes, but also we should manage our wastewater also for environmental considerations and recycling. So the first is to create asset capture and put it on a GIS map. I think Trimble has, and Dr. Gosain would know this more than anybody else. We have a number of different solutions, starting with our handheld geospatial mapping solutions. We have something called the Site Vision, that is basically GNSS on a software, on a phone that can take in existing maps and tell you, where you are, what kind of asset is below the ground. So we have the asset capture piece covered with our survey and mapping solutions. I think the next step is, okay, once you have the assets, can we utilize analytics, data analytics, and sensing and analytics to determine in real time, what kind of maintenance work needs to be done, whether a valve has to be shut, whether a valve has to be opened, where there is a leakage, and so on. So for that, we have sensors, and Trimble sensors called Telog. We acquired a company called Telog that makes sensors that not only capture the event, but also enable us to do a lot of data analytics to predict failures, to predict maintenance issues, and so on. So the second piece is sensorization, and capturing of real-time data and analytics. The third piece is we have a software, a cloud-based software called Unity, that can work with any GIS map. And basically it is an operation and management solution that gives out the the real-time situation in the entire water network, whether it is wastewater or drinking water in the pipe network. It gives real-time situation in terms of raises an alarm if there is a leakage, or if the pressure is low or if the pressure is high. And it can work on any GIS map as long as it gets real-time information. And then it can basically alert the operators to attend to that. So it's not a SCADA, it's not a two-way solution, but it is a very cost-effective, time-effective, easy-to-use O&M solution from Trimble that many city water utilities utilize in the US, and we are trying to promote that in India also. And it's a cloud-based system. It is software as a service. So it's very, very simple to use because SCADA systems, I mean, despite all the feature-rich solutions that are there as part of SCADA, it's hard to implement. It takes months and years, and it is also hard to maintain. Whereas this one offers a very simple real-time communication to the operators, and they can take respective actions. So those are the three main things. And then these telemetry units can be not only used for water pipes and so on, but it can be used for water bodies also. Wastewater plant, water treatment plant, and so on. So it's very versatile set of solutions we have from Trimble. So let me stop here. I know that I'm sure Dr. Gosain will have some questions and his own ideas.
Yes, thank you, Rajan. And nice to see you after a long time.
Yes.
See, the question of water security has to go beyond just some elements which we are discussing right now, the urban elements. When we start looking at the water security at the country level, we have to start thinking in terms of what is the availability of water to start with. And the question is that geospatial technologies are still only the enablers. It's enabling technology. It can showcase what you want to showcase to stakeholders after you have done the science part using different kinds of models. And now the good thing is that almost every model which you want to use to check your water security at the country level has an interface of the geospatial technology, which is what has happened over the last 30 years. But the key question still remains that when you talk of water security, you have to look at what are the policies in place, how we are utilizing the water which is available by the nature, whether it's the surface water or whether it's the groundwater. We have to start looking at the basin, which is part of the national water policy. But each basin has its own capability of providing the water as a resource. And that water has to be utilized for various purposes, including the agriculture, the industry, as well as the domestic requirements. And you have to also leave something for the environmental purpose, for the river itself. All that put together, the first requirement for the country is to really reassess what is the present status of water resource, which keeps on changing from year to year. There is a variability, which is going to be really more in the coming years because of the climate change implications. So I think that is the starting point, which as a country, as a researcher, I can think of, where we should use these technologies very effectively. The issues which are important are that at the basin level, I mean, we have been analyzing every basin of the country. We have found that almost every basin is under duress, is under distress. You must have heard that almost every district in the country, The Central Groundwater Board keeps on declaring them more and more under stress because of the mining of the groundwater. So the groundwater table is falling. What it implies that your demand of water is much more than the total demand, the total availability put together because of the surface water as well as the groundwater. So you are mining the groundwater, which is supposed to be a reserve storage for you to be used very scarcely whenever there is a situation that you don't have other the monsoon fails and you have to bank on that water. But we are depleting the groundwater. This is very, very scary situation. So I will also like to convey here that we have not done anything to arrest this situation. I have not seen any area where the water table is started coming up. We talk of the artificial recharge, we talk of various things, various schemes, but most of the time these are conflicting objectives. Right now we have declared another thing that we are going to give the tap water to almost every household in the country without actually deciding and understanding that from where this water is going to come. Are we targeting the same resource? This is basically the groundwater, which will be depleted at much faster rate in future because of our additional stress put on that. Or are we taking water from some other sources which are because of the demand management? So I think it's a very, very serious question which we are debating. But unless we showcase that we have, because of the enhancement of the efficiency, we have taken out water from the agriculture. Now they require, because of the enhancement of efficiency which is possible, irrigation efficiency can go from 35%, which is the present level, to 60% without much problem. It only requires investments. It requires the change of methods of irrigation. So we have to showcase that first, and then target that, okay, now this is the released water from the existing demand. Now we can allocate to some other sector, maybe drinking water. We can say that this water is going to be available for any scheme which is going to be a new scheme. So I think at this juncture, what we need and what we have been doing, using these technologies to bring home the information which is disseminated to all the stakeholders and make them sit together. This is our total resource available. This is the present demand. There is a deficit. Let's think of how to allocate that deficit in a manner that we start reviving these river basins, which are our resource, the areas of resource where the resource gets generated every year. And we have done the simulation of all the river basins as part of our research in the two communications which have gone to the UNFCCC, where we identified that what are the implications to the water resources of the country on account of the climate change. And that has been made available. So that the geospatial technologies are very beautiful technologies where we could showcase, because you can use the distributed models, the hydrological models, because of the GIS being available. And we could showcase that within the same basin, which are the areas which are going to be under more stress, which are the areas which are going to be under less stress, where you have more problems. And those are issues which need to be taken up in the organizations which are the organizations who are managing this resource at the state level, because it's a state subject. But the center has to keep track of who are the culprits who are making this resource deplete faster, or who are taking the water which is basically belonging to some neighbor and is taken away by the other people. You must have seen that in the case of agriculture, most of the depletion is taking place from the agriculture sector, because of the agriculture sector. Because people don't have the resources for irrigation available, which are the very conventional surface irrigation resources. The canal systems are they are falling apart. People are finding it easy to dig a tube well and start withdrawing the groundwater. But there's a competition of sorts, and all these farmers who are committing suicide because they are taking loan, they have dug the tube well, then the next neighbor who might be a more wealthy farmer, he has dug a tube well which is much deeper. So with the result, he has made this tube well go defunct because the water table has gone below the level from where he was extracting water. But this cannot go on forever. So we need the geospatial technologies to be used for regulating this utilization of the water in a judicious manner. And that is possible because the technologies are very ripe, as you were giving the examples that the models are there. You have the models which can be running in the cloud, and all the cloud computing is possible. But your data of the actual usage has to come from the ground. You are using that to a certain extent some proxies in the form of some data from the remote sensing, but those will remain proxies. I need to put in the information in the system that how much is the present water available and how much has been utilized by people of various sectors. That online information is still not available. It can be made available. So we can say that yes, the technologies are right, that you can make use of all these technologies to do a better management of this very precious resource. But we are not there. We are not there. Only some of the states have started taking cognizance of this, and they are trying to reach there. But there is a long way to go. I think you must, you are also party to that in some way. The concept of NSDI, the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, which was started in 2000, around 20 years ago. What we have done of that? Nothing has come off in the last 20 years of the effort which was put in by the government, and that has not materialized. That was a very good initiative which was taken. So I think if we want to really use these technologies in the manner in which they can make benefit to the country and make us water secure, we have to go back to the NSDI kind of framework where all this data, which is the data of utilization, should become available in one place, at least for a basin. You can say that all the basin activities, because they are for basin like Ganga, there are 11 states which are involved. So you cannot deprive the downstream state because you have taken the water upstream and you have utilized all the water, and then you have not left anything below that. We need to create systems which can use the geospatial technologies, and they can do wonders. I'll give you an example. We have a small company which was incubated by the IIT system. It's called NRI and INRM. They have showcased. We are doing the real-time flood forecasting of the whole country, modeling each river basin every day, doing the simulation, and every day we are getting the data from IMD, the next 7 days of rainfall forecast for the whole country. And we are doing the simulation with the view that you can do the real-time flood forecasting. So on any day, using these 7 days of rainfall forecast, we are giving at any location in that basin what is the possible discharge which is going to come at that level at that point.
Hello.
And that is becoming that is made public.
Yes.
So I can even share that link.
No,
And that is the kind of thing which is again using the geospatial technologies, and we are showcased that it's possible to provide well in advance a flood forecast for a longer period, which otherwise is not possible if you don't use the rainfall forecast. Because if you are using the catchment lag or the basin lag only, then by the time the rain falls, and then you are having catchment lag, which might vary from 1 day to 5 days, depending on which basin you are talking about. You can add that by 7 days and make those forecasts and take all the precautions to avoid the areas to be or the people to be dying because of the flooding. You have a warning system which can be given. So along with that, if we are doing the simulation on a daily basis for all the basins, it can also be used for looking at the health of the crop. There are 60% of the area in the country which are having only rain-fed agriculture. So since we are keeping track of the rainfall, we are keeping track of the soil moisture, we can give a very good advisory to the farmers, telling them what is their requirement in terms of their water requirement, looking at the soil moisture, when they need the irrigation to be done, so that you can make the utilization of the water by the farmers for irrigation purpose much judicious. Even the reduction in the groundwater mining can also happen if they know that they don't need they don't have the requirement of the water, or they can wait for 2 more days and there is some rainfall coming because of the rainfall forecast given by the IMD. So I think there is a huge scope, and it's a question of taking these technologies and embedding them into the day-to-day work of the organizations at the state water resources levels. And they have to adopt these technologies and start making use of these technologies in various ways. I've just given a couple of examples. So I'll stop here.
I think you made some really, really good points. We have to take a holistic approach. You're right. We have to start from the source, whether it is an aquifer or a well or a river or other groundwater supply, and then we have to start measuring at every step, because without measuring we cannot improve. And then you have the water treatment plants, and then the transmission and distribution, and finally at the home. I think this is a holistic approach, and agriculture is one of the biggest users of water. And I think we need to, as you said, teach intelligent and modern agricultural practices. I can tell you that just going out of the city of Chennai, to go to the villages, what I'm seeing is, because the electricity supply is not reliable, these farmers, whenever there is electricity supply, whether the ground needs water or not, they just switch on the pump. Okay. They don't give any idea, because they say, I don't know when the electricity is going to come next, so might as well flood the place. Now, what they don't realize is that they are not only wasting water, but they're actually reducing the yield. So interestingly, Trimble has some solutions for water management, where we do things like very simple things like land leveling and moisture content measurement that can tell the farmer, hey, you don't need to water for another 2 days. So I'm sure electricity will come by then. So don't waste water, right? Or, hey, if you don't level properly the land, then you can have stagnation and runoffs and stagnations, which again is not good for your crops. So I think we need to start that. And so that's one thing. The second thing is, even in a city like Chennai, many apartment complexes do not have water meters, individual water meters. So we have no idea who is using water, who is abusing water, who is, whose taps are leaking, etc. So I think these are some very small things that we can make for smart water smart water management, in addition to the technology that we talked about. But geospatial, as you correctly pointed out, is going to be a very key set of technologies. And I'm so glad to hear about the new policy on geospatial creation of data and utilization and consumption. I think we will see some very great innovation, like you mentioned, from startups that will use this data in very innovative ways that can be implemented in a very cost-effective way. So yes, but basically everything starts with measurement and a willingness to improve.
But the water security, I think the major component we have to keep on giving stress, that the solutions for India are by reducing your demand, by enhancing the efficiency, and
Yes.
Rainwater harvesting is only a very, I mean, in my list is the last
That's
option.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's
Because unless if you do the rainwater harvesting, you are only moving water from where it was going earlier, and you are moving into the ground. Now that is not a solution, and a situation will come that many of your existing projects, if you keep on doing the more of rainwater harvesting and go beyond the threshold level, then your existing projects will be having the ill effects. You will find that your major reservoirs, which are going to receive the water from its own catchment,
Professor Gosain, I'm extremely very sorry for interruption, but we are running out of time.
So we are almost done. So I think we have to be choosing the options very carefully, and that is where the science is very important to be used. And the geospatial technologies are going to be a beautiful. They are already beautiful technologies to be used to convince the stakeholders that this is what is happening and this is where it has the problems.
yes.
Thank you.